Morgan.
Yes. Can we suggest a correction to the minutes? Because there's one thing in here in the minutes that I'm real concerned with. I made the statement that it was cost 50 to 75,000 in lost production to train an employee. The way it's stated in here, we need funding from the state to fill this. I was not asking for funding in any way. I was bringing up the importance of the educational. So it's just the way that's written up, but that's very misleading in the way it's written in there.
Well, let's make.
Okay, I'll make that update.
Well, and we'll just.
It looked like we're asking for money to offset the cost of that loss in production for training, and that was not my intent in any way at all, the way it's written up right now.
Thank you, Mr. Morgan, for making that correction. And we'll just note that when we try to approve our minutes for the next meeting. So thank you. So with that being said, anyone else have any other concerns about that? If not, we'll move on to our first speaker. Wonderful. Well, I'd like to welcome, and I know I feel like I'm bringing some of our staff, but we just had a update earlier this week from our Office of Emergency Management, and we had a pilot program that we had gotten some data on, and I was super excited about the results, and I felt it was relevant to our conversations. So I hope you didn't mind if I just snuck him on the beginning of the agenda, but Stephen Decatur is with our Office of Emergency Management team, and our Office of Emergency Management's fairly, I wouldn't say new, but it's within the last few years we've had an Office of Emergency Management team, and we're really focused on resiliency as well as recovery, and they've done a lot of great work with the Cameron Peak Fire and other incidences here in Limerick County. We just had our tabletop exercise this week. I was very impressed with everyone's work, and I participated in that slightly. So, Stephen, I'm going to turn it over to you to present about the results from our pilot program and some of the work that you've been doing, and let you answer some questions at the end. So if you're ready to present.
Yes, let me just share my screen real quick. Can everyone see that?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, looks good.
Okay. So it's a lot of words here, but I really just want to focus on some takeaways from this. So we started a community-led mitigation grant program this year. And the goal of that program was to mitigate hazards, of course, but in this goal statement, you see that there's an and that and is really important here. So that and is to build community resilience by empowering community members to take action and encouraging relationships. So this has a mitigation focus. It's a mitigation grant program, but it also has a community resilience focus. And we really want to build community and empower community to take action on the hazards that they face. And so we were really intentional in our eligibility. So you don't really need to read all of that, but the takeaway here for this eligibility is that it's very simple. It's very open. The focus is really on small grassroots efforts. So we really put an emphasis on, we want it to be a community-led project. We don't want this to be some bigger group that comes in and says, hey, we need to do this, and they're asking for the money. We want the community to come to us and ask for the money to do something that they believe is a hazard in their community. And so there's a real emphasis on community buy-in and benefit and participation of the landowners in that community. So if we go down to the criteria, this is how we scored. And you can see the criteria is very simple as well. And if you look at the criteria, these bullet points, 2 of those bullet points are focused on the hazard itself, and 2 of them are focused on the community. Does this project have the buy-in? Does it have the participation? Is there groups that are helping with this project? Have they reached out to other agencies for help? How tied in are they with like their fire district? So the criteria is focused on the hazard, but it's also focused on the community buy-in. So there's it's not just about mitigating the hazard. We really want to empower the community to take action, and we really want them to become more resilient by having more capacity to take on these challenges. And this will help even after a disaster. That's the hope, is that if something does happen, this community will be better off because they have those connections already established. So we had this application for this grant program open for just 2 weeks, and we had $50,000 available. We were giving out $10,000 per award maximum. So we had 16 applications requesting $132,000. So we had a huge interest, even though this was a brand new program and we only had it open for 2 weeks. And I have a link to the website here, and I can send this slide out after this, but that kind of goes into detail of who we awarded. But this program, we've seen benefits that are outside of the obvious. So the obvious benefit is that we're going to see a reduction of hazards. And that's what we hope to see. That's what any mitigation grant program hopes to see. But there have been some benefits outside of that and that we're already seeing. And one of those is building trust and community connections. We in Larimer County OEM, we try to get out there and make those community connections, but it's hard sometimes, especially with the distrust of government. But you'd be surprised by offering some money that has relatively low eligibility and criteria that makes it easy for people to apply to. We really wanted to reduce barriers, and that has gone a long way to build some trust in the community. We had those 16 applications. We were only able to award 8, but I went through each application and I responded to the ones we didn't award, and I said, hey, next year, this is what you can do to improve upon that application. And really all of those were about, I want to see more community connection. Can you give me more letters of support from your neighbors? Can you get me a letter of support from the fire district? Here's the contact for that person. So it was really about, I was really focused on, yes, there's a hazard there, and we realize that, but I really want to see more community connection. And here's the people that you can reach out to that can help you with a letter of support that will make your application even stronger next year. And it was those community connections as well. We had one application that was, it was really just on one landowner property. And yes, they could have done the work and it would have probably benefited their neighbors. But I came back and I said, we really want to see your neighbors involved in this. And we know $10,000 isn't going to go very far, but we really want to see them involved in this. And so if you come back next year with a different application where they're involved, you'll probably get funded. And then we also wanted to see, we've also seen a benefit of building community capacity. We had one application this year. It was a community by Horsetooth Reservoir, and they had never done any fire mitigation work before. This was their first time doing it. They organized and they put together a presentation. One of our requirements is that they do a community presentation, a community meeting. And this community meeting went amazing. They ran the whole thing. I was just there to listen. I don't even think I talked because it's not about me, it's about the community. And so they really took ownership of the problem. They really talked about the game plan, and they talked about a plan outside of just the money that we gave them. They talked about the next 3 years following this funding. They had a plan to set aside funds in their road association to do fire mitigation work continuously for the next 3 years. And it was all because we had this funding available this year. It kind of spurred the interest, and they really said, hey, we can actually do something about this. And so that comes to empowering the community. You give the community a little bit of money and a little bit of direction, and they really take it and they run with it. And it creates community ownership of the problem. And that's really what we want to see, is that they take ownership of it, because in government, we can only do so much. We can't solve every problem. And it goes a long way if the community will take ownership of the problem and begin working towards a solution. And so we've also seen new partnerships formed from this. I now have contacts for 16 different communities that I didn't even know existed before this grant program. Well, 2 of them I did know existed before this grant program, but the other ones were all new communities that I had never interacted with before. And we now have a relationship with somebody there, and somebody who's a community leader, because these applications were put together by one person. They have the community buy-in, but we now have like a contact person for that community. So if a disaster was to happen today, I know if I reach out to this person, they have the contact information for this whole neighborhood. And so it's really informative, and it's a powerful tool to make those connections out in the community, and to form those new partnerships. So that's really the benefits that we've seen from this program. And I'm happy to answer any questions. That's really all I had for you.
Can you show the awards, Stephen, real quick? Do you have that slide?
Yes, I did not put it in a slide, but I can go to the website real quick. So these were the awards. We only awarded one for the full 10,000. Some of the awardees requested less, and some of them were partial awards. But they all ended up being, well, 7 of them ended up being fire mitigation related, and then 1 of them was post-fire recovery related to Cameron Peak Fire. So they ended up all being fire related, but we left this open for any kind of disaster. That was just the overwhelming need in the community this year. So you can see all these awards for the most part are road associations and homeowners associations. So they're smaller groups. And we even leave it open to groups that aren't technically formed. So if there was a neighborhood that didn't have an HOA, but they organized and wanted to request this money, we would still award them if it was a good project.
Great. Thank you. Christy has a question.
Hi, Stephen. You did mention that you had a landowner that applied, and because there was the cooperation with neighbor component missing, my question is was the focus of that landowner more mitigation? Would the landowner have benefited from being able to get a grant and do actual mitigation, even though they really didn't have their application done well enough, from the neighbor cooperation standpoint? Does that make sense?
Yeah, they did. They would have benefited for sure, and it would have probably benefited the neighborhood as well, because it was a property that was fairly large, and it was in the northern Red Feather Lakes area, if you're familiar with our county, and it was against Forest Service property, so it would have kind of created a buffer from Forest Service to the community. But with it missing that community component, we're really missing an important aspect there, which is that capacity building and that community connectivity that we really want to see. And so it really came down to it had to have both. And we realized that's a tough decision, but I mean, we had 16 applications and this was only open for 2 weeks and we had to make some tough decisions. So that's really what it came down to.
Thank you.
Julie, go ahead. It looks like Jody stepped away.
Thank you. Yeah, Stephen, I had a question. So it sounds like what I hear you saying, to maybe piggyback off of Christy's question, because I had the same thought when you were presenting. It sounds like behind the scenes, is there some sort of ranking criteria that you use to sort of evaluate? I assume all these projects are mitigating some level of risk, right? So you're looking at the level of risk that's being mitigated. You're looking at community impact, and can you talk maybe just a little bit about how you walk through that process?
Yeah, let me actually go back to my slides. Let's see. Okay, so for the criteria, it's down here. And so there's 4 criteria. They're 5 points each. We have a total score of 20. 5 points each. Okay. Yep. And so it's the first one is the project's overall contribution to long-term resiliency for the whole community. So that's the reduction of the impact of natural hazards to the community as a result of the project. So if we feel like this is going to really help the resiliency of the community, that's 5 points, and that's really more hazard mitigation based. That's more focused on the hazard. And then the last one is also more focused on the hazard. That's the result of a basic cost benefit analysis that we would do. And that one, I kind of want to change the wording of that because it's not so much of a cost benefit analysis. It's more of a looking at what we really did was we looked at the risk for that particular hazard, whether it was a map of fire risk or or maybe their narrative that they put about the risk, kind of explaining it, and maybe the letters of support they have towards that risk. It was kind of evaluating, is this hazard really a big threat for this community? And then the other two in the middle, the level of community involvement, buy-in, and partnership for the project and the long-term capacity building. So that's really focused on how involved is the community, and then partnership engagement. Have they pulled in other partners? Have they made some connections with some other partners, like the fire districts, maybe some nonprofits? We have watershed coalitions in this county, a few different ones, or like the Ember Alliance or some other group like that. So that was the criteria. So 2 were focused on the community, and 2 were focused on the hazard.
Got it. So each application could earn up to the equally weighted criteria, and then maybe you're going to score 1 to 5 throughout each, and that's how that's how they get distinguished. Got
Yes.
it. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Matt.
Hey, Stephen, I appreciate the presentation, and very excited about the county's interest in incentivizing these types of relationships and engagements. I think it's, with our grant programming of the State Forest Service, it's very similar. If you can kind of find one community member that kind of serves as that open door or vector to get sort of the rest of the HOA or the rest of the road corridor, or however you can expand that opportunity. But I guess one of the things that I'm curious about is what interactions have you had in particular with the State Forest Service and some of our programming? I look at, one of the things that we love to do is try to use county or municipal engagement around funding and use it, help build that into leverage for larger applications for other funds, that we have at the state level or even at the federal level. And then, you did talk about a project build. So that's one question. The second would be, as you near that National Forest Service boundary and you're looking at those buffers or some of that feathered, forest management that helps reduce fire intensity when fire occurs, or the potential effects, have you had any success or any interaction with our federal partners on how we want, because the big goal, right, is always to try to figure out how we can advance projects that treat, the landscape, or especially around these key values at risk, these communities. So I'm just curious to know what kind of interactions you've had, and if you had support from folks in our Fort Collins office, or because really I'm driving towards, like, how can we help you, continue to grow your program and grow your success?
Yeah. So in terms of with this program, we haven't really tied in with the State Forest Service or any other groups. This is kind of we really wanted the focus to be on the community and what those community needs are. So I did bring this to the Northern Colorado Fireshed and let them know that we've created this and this is happening. And a lot of those smaller organizations, like the watershed groups, did write letters of support for some of these applications. And like the Ember Alliance did as well. The Larimer County Sheriff's Office Initial Attack Module, they wrote a letter of support for a few of them, and then some of the fire districts. But in terms of tying this into like a larger scale landscape aspect, we do understand the importance of this, but we're really looking with this one. It's only $10,000 maximum for the community. So it's really, in terms of mitigation, it's not going to make a huge impact. The impact that we really want to see what this money does is we really want to see it increase that community capacity. And so that's, it's a community-led mitigation grant program, but the real focus is that community connectivity, because $10,000, as you know, really doesn't go far with mitigation for wildfire, especially with the increased cost of contractors recently. So we're really just trying to build that capacity in those communities so that they can really do more work themselves. But I will say that we definitely are tied in with the Forest Service here. Max Erickson, I know him very well. He was one of the key people who helped with our co-swap applications that we put forward. So we definitely are looking at tying in projects and making those cross-boundary, large landscape scale efforts. But this is a little bit different just because it's such a smaller application.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate it. And I love this idea of just sort of using a smaller award just to incentivize, that capacity, that engagement piece. But I also just want to encourage you to think about, as this program continues to grow its impact, that even those small investments can be signals as really of large leverage. You know, sometimes the leverage that you bring into an application or into a larger project doesn't necessarily tie to the funding. It just ties to the fact that a community is investing something, right? That they're putting something forward. And certainly at the state and federal level, we understand that $10,000 may not seem like a lot, but it can to a municipal, to an HOA, or even to a county government. And that little bit of leverage says a lot about where that community's mind is at and where their ambition is. So just something to think about as you continue to focus on that resiliency and capacity inside the community boundaries. But know that if people's ambitions start to charge, right, because of that increased capacity that you're creating, that we're right there waiting to make sure that they're going to be competitive with the variety of funding that's coming online here.
And that's a very good point. And one of the things that I did do after we got all the applications in and made the awards is that I did send out all those applications that we got and who we awarded. And I sent that list to the Northern Colorado Fireshed group. I said, hey, if you're looking to do projects in any of these areas, here's the applications we received. So we do have community interest in these communities. And here's like the contact person. So reach out if you're looking to do a project there.
I love that. It's like leads, I mean, because that's, that's what we need. We're about, we are not about to, we are in the process of ramping up substantially in partnership with the federal partners. And we're going to be looking for those leads to sort of bundle up parcels and communities for larger scale projects, especially those adjacent. I'll shut up and let Mark talk.
Yeah, and then we'll have to move on and give enough time for Front Range, but I'm sure Stephen will be open for questions, but I think this is really great questions. And the other thing I feel like this was important with this project is the community buy-in. We have all those folks that feel uncomfortable about mitigation work, or we're building relationships and trust that down the road, this is going to be huge as we do this larger scale work. And I just thought this is, just adding drops in that bucket of, community trust and relationships, as we're going to need to do this as just a massive scale. But Mr. Morgan.
I'll make a quick comment and a suggestion. Having been on the receiving end of the work of a whole lot of these projects over a lot of years, one pitfall that you might want to try to avoid, or at least considering, is oftentimes funding for this project from larger sources is predicated on the funding available from the community. And oftentimes wealthier communities get a much larger share of the available funding, even though their projects do not have the merit of a lot of other projects. Oftentimes the money follows the money rather than the money going to the need. So I would just suggest that you consider that.
Yeah, and that's a good point. That was one of the reasons we decided not to go with a cost share for this. We didn't want, we tried to reduce as many barriers as possible. So we didn't want to say you need to commit X dollars to this. We really just left it open for what they needed.
A lot of mitigation work around a lot of millionaires' houses and watch some people with a lot less money's community burn up. And that's all I'm suggesting.
Great. Well, I think I can, Stephen, if you wouldn't mind putting your contact information in the chat. And sorry, my clock is going off. And I think we'll appreciate you coming this morning and last minute ask there. And I'm really excited when we got that report, just how the response and the need. And I just wanted to share that all with you because I think it might be another tool in the toolbox. So anyway, I will move on to our next presenter. Thank you, Stephen. Have a great weekend. We'll see you soon.
Thank you.
So Mr. Morgan, I'll let you take over and introduce your guests, and we'll move on to our next presentation.
Well, Jennifer Lee and Heather Danahauer are here from Front Range Community College, and they've got a great presentation for you, I hope, today, and show you about the program that they've had for the last 30 years there in producing the workforce and graduates that we need to accomplish all this work you guys have got lined up. So.
Okay. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. I will share my screen, and I have not used Google Meet before, so hopefully I can do it fairly easily. Maria? Okay. Oh, it's bumping around. Okay, does that look like? Looks like we're sharing.
Yeah, looks great.
Okay. Mine is grayed out, but we'll go forward and see how it works, see how it goes. So first of all, thank you very much for inviting us here today. We're aware your time is very valuable, and we appreciate the opportunity to showcase our forestry technician program. I'm Jennifer Lee, as I introduced myself earlier, and I oversee the Natural Resources program at Front Range Community College. Joining me today is my colleague Heather Danahauer, and she works more closely with the forestry technician or technology program. And this presentation is really meant to be informal, so please do not hesitate to ask questions during it, and I'll try to keep an eye on everything to see. There we go, it moved. Great. I want to start by giving you a brief overview of our program. So we offer 3 degrees. We offer an Associates of Applied Science and Natural Resource Technology, which is a broad brush of the natural resources field. We also offer 2 specialized professional degrees, one in wildlife technology and one in forestry technology. Both of these degrees are professionally accredited. All 3 degrees provide students with the skills necessary to enter the workforce. We offer 7 certificates, which are most often pursued by people that are trying to retool themselves or change careers. Our program history, so our program's been in existence for over 30 years. We are guided by an advisory board of natural resources professionals, which really allows us to respond quickly to industry changes versus some of the more programs that are more steeped in academic procedure, perhaps. Takes a little longer to make those changes, and because we have that advisory board, we're a little more nimble in being able to make those responses to industry as industry changes. Our program began in 1991 as a vocational program for high school students. It initially served 4 different school districts, and this brought awareness of the field and open doors for a lot of younger students. When you hear that from industry, that this is an important component, is getting natural resource careers out in front of some of our teenagers as they're trying to figure out what they might want to do with their lives. In 2002, the college program was added, awarding graduates a single degree in forestry, wildlife, and natural resources. And in 2015, in response to industry demand, the program was diversified to offer 3 distinct technical degrees. The high school program was unfortunately ended in 2020, but it has been revamped and will be offered this fall through Poudre School District. Enrollment in our degrees has remained steady or grown since their inception, despite the recent trend. We've had about a 5-year trend of decrease overall in community college enrollment, but not in our program. Ours is remaining strong and is actually growing. But the unfortunate part for us is we're at capacity, so we can't really accept any more students into our program for where we sit now. When we added these specialized degrees, we were able to seek and obtain accreditation from professional organizations. You can see from this graphic that we are unique in our offerings in the United States. The teal indicates schools that offer wildlife technology degrees, which are accredited by the North American Wildlife Technology Association, and the pink indicates those that have a forestry technology program accredited by Society of American Foresters. As you can see by this map, we are only one of 2 schools that offers programs accredited by both organizations, and we are the only school in the Intermountain West. This makes us highly sought after by students in many different states, and specifically in Colorado. We draw students. We have students that drive from Parker, from Colorado Springs. We have a student that took the bus from Longmont. And I get calls. I get a call a week usually from someone out of state saying, "Hey, we heard about your program. We know you're SAF accredited. What do I need to do to get in?" So we're very proud of this, and it was a lot of hard work, especially that SAF accreditation. We're very proud of it. But today's purpose really is to provide you with information on our forestry technology degree specifically. So we'll focus on this moving forward, in which case I'm actually going to hand the presentation over to my colleague Heather, who was just awarded Outstanding Forestry Instructor by the Colorado-Wyoming Society of American Foresters chapter. So Heather, I'll run the slides and I'll hand it off to you.
Thank you, Jennifer, despite me asking you not to mention that. And thank you to the rest of you really for this time. We really appreciate the opportunity to share a little bit about our program with you. As Jennifer mentioned, our program is accredited by the Society of American Foresters, or SAF, and we're honored to be one of only 23 accredited technical programs by SAF in the United States and Canada. And then regardless of accreditation status, we are still the only 2-year forestry program in the state of Colorado. So whether they're accredited or not, we're just still the only show in town, so to speak. And our program really is highly focused on preparing students for the workforce. Go ahead and go to the next slide, Jennifer. Our goals really, our program is really seeking to combine both the theory of forestry education with the practice. All classes contain a strong component of field-based training where students can apply what they have learned in the classroom in a variety of forest types and conditions. And this includes being responsive to current events and using them as learning opportunities. I know I shouldn't get excited when there's a fire near town, but when there is a fire, a small fire near town on public lands, I get excited because I know I can teach there, or I hope I can teach there. So this may include using these recently burned sites, maybe sites that are undergoing forest treatments, or maybe sites that have not had active management in years. Besides the extensive field training, our other focus really is on career preparedness. We want to expose students to a wide range of career options so they can make informed decisions about their future. And we do this through connecting them with the employers and learning about the forest practice firsthand. Two more notable aspects of our program, and aside from the intensive field trainings, is that we are home to one of only 3 Ponce forestry equipment simulators used by educational institutions in the US. And having entry-level employees who are trained and already familiar with machine operation will save industry money in training and operational efficiency. The second kind of notable aspect we want to highlight this morning is our newly revamped wildland fire training. We partner with the Ember Alliance to deliver cutting-edge wildland fire curriculum. We are unique in the nation in that this program includes not only the nationally standardized wildland fire curriculum from the National Wildland Fire Coordination Group, or NWCG, but also includes hands-on field training and education in mental health, stress management, and self-care. These are skills needed on the fire line, yet are not part of the traditional fire curriculum. Students graduating with FRCC's wildland fire training are being employed across the nation due to this holistic approach. And it's not all just simulators and flames in our program. The Forest Technology program includes a solid foundation of forestry courses, as well as a wide range of electives for students to round out their education and create their own portfolio of their specialized training. This slide is just a snapshot of some of our courses in order to give you an idea of the breadth of our program. Perhaps my favorite part of the program is our connection with many partner organizations and individuals. Over the history of the program, we have gained the respect of industry and developed many partnerships. Although this list is long, it is definitely not all-inclusive. We wanted to showcase that our partners include all sectors of employers, such as the federal government, like the U.S. Forest Service, as well as state entities, such as Colorado State Forest Service and Colorado Parks and Wildlife, and local governments, such as cities and counties, especially here in northern Colorado. Nonprofit groups, such as McGregor Ranch and Wildland Restoration Volunteers, and of course, the private industry, including our favorite, Morgan Timber Products. Missing from this slide are the many private landowners who graciously allow us to conduct labs on their land. And this list keeps growing. Just last week, we were contacted by 2 different entities inquiring about partnering opportunities. With that, I'll toss it back over to Jen.
I'm going to pop back in and just give you a few personal examples of students. The outcome of our program is our students get employed. Our students are in high demand as employees, and we often hear from employers that they seek out our students specifically because of the hands-on training that students receive. One example of this is in 2020, a forester from Region 2 contacted me to inquire about recent graduates as he heard that we turned out competent employees. I connected him to Erin Schultz. She's our cartoon image here because she's our students are out in the field, so it's really hard to get a hold of them to get snapshots to add to this presentation. But she now works for Region 2, and she wrote this to me after being hired. She said, I can't even tell you how grateful I am to you. I've been trying to get a permanent position for 11 years, and now I feel like I'm in a fairy tale because it honestly never felt like it would happen. Anyway, I'm greatly indebted to you because I certainly wouldn't have found or even thought to apply for the position. If there's anything I can do for you and the NRE program in the future, let me know. Doing the forestry certificate was one of the best decisions of my life, and FRCC has been the most positive school experience I've ever had. So this is an example of a student that came back and did our certificate program and was able to bounce right into industry after that. The gentleman in the center there leaning on the logs, that's Tom Rowland, and he now works as a silviculturist for the U.S. Forest Service. And then apologies to Daniel Tina, because all I could do is pull that off his Instagram site because he's in the woods right now with Northwest Management doing restoration work this summer. So that's just a little snapshot of our students and kind of to wrap up how we and our students sort of feel about our experience. If my slide will switch. Okay. Maybe we're going to get there. This is just a good summation of a student experience from Andrew Wegner. And he states, I'm a lifelong student and former educator with 40 years of classroom experience. The positive relationship instructors cultivate with students combined with hands-on learning activities in the field have made my time at FRCC the most meaningful, enjoyable educational experience of my life. So with that, we are really excited to be invited into the conversation about the needs of the forestry industry. And we really look forward to assisting in those needs and continuing this conversation. And thank you for your time. And we're happy to answer any questions.
Great presentation. Thank you so much. How exciting to have this in my area. It's really exciting. I can't see, did someone raise a hand? I'm looking for any questions. Oh, Mr. Morgan.
Yes. In my association with Front Range Community College over quite a few years, I've been impressed with them. Obviously, I'm beating the drum here now, and I feel it's important because I think we have a great source for the people that you're going to need to try to do the projects and the management work that you're going to do. I think there's a great source right here in the community, and my interest in this is to try to help grow this program. So my question is, what can we do as a committee or as a group to try to support and grow this program? Because I believe very strongly, having employed probably 8 or 9 of their graduates in the past and had an excellent experience with all of them. I think that it's a great way for your organizations that you represent here today to tool up and get your work done. How do we go about growing this? That's my question. How do we bring this to scale? If you're in the business world, you bring something to scale, you grow it, and you use it to fill the need we've got. And that's my question.
Well, I think this would be a great discussion for us to bring to the Forest Health Council, that we have identified this as a discussion to have. So, but I'll go ahead and let, I'm not sure if it was Christy first and then Matt.
Go ahead, Christy.
I had pretty much the same question, and I'm super excited because this is like the first discussion in one of the first discussions in any of the meetings I've been in so far that it's like, Yahoo, there's action. Like there's this, you guys look like you can produce results quickly. So exact same question. How do we scale this?
And again, I think this is great. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, just dovetailing on these thoughts. I mean, first of all, with Mark and I have been talking about this since I came on board, and you can both expect a personal engagement, with the State Forest Service leadership here. I'd like to have a similar presentation come forward to our leadership team and to engage with the agency directly, because I just want to, you're touching on one of the most, so I've been participating in a handful of National Association of State Forestry meetings, as well as the Council of Western State Foresters. also engaging with our friends in the federal government as we ramp up substantially, right, with these huge investments, historic investments. It's wonderful to have all this money and to finally be able to move out on sort of the rhetoric that we've been talking about for years. But money doesn't mean anything if you don't have people to actually implement. So the pipeline for capacity is one of the chief conversations. So I think this is a perfect discussion for the advisory, for the council, but I also would love to continue to engage with you as we talk about this at a regional and national scale, because I want to make sure that Colorado is well staffed, right, as we move forward in ambition towards getting the work done that again we've been planning for and to some degree have the resources for now. But I also want to ensure that the Intermountain West and all of the folks that that are going to we're in competition with have hopefully a robust supply of new graduates coming into the field. So this is just so timely, such a perfect conversation for this group to have, and a perfect place for us to have longer conversations and more thoughtful conversations about investment and growth, because these are the kind of returns that you can generate by being part of the pipeline are going to have incredible benefits for the people of Colorado. So how exciting. I can't wait to engage with you further. And I apologize, Mark, in particular, for having not had this conversation or this type of engagement up until now, but look forward to some more going forward.
Angela.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. And to get into the weeds a little bit, just because I'm curious as my gears start to turn. I'm curious, Jennifer, Heather, could you give me a general idea, sort of the funding structure for FRCC and for this program in particular? I mean, I sort of assume you're like other higher education institutions in Colorado where you do get some state funding, but it's pretty minor in your total budget. It's probably 4% or something like that. But I'd be curious to hear, to what extent it's sort of self perpetuating through tuition dollars versus other funding sources.
Yeah, I can answer that with minimal knowledge, and I could definitely pass that question on to Angela and get a stronger answer for you. But we are, just like most community colleges in Colorado, one of 12, and that funding comes down for those 12 institutions, and it's not a lot that comes from the state. Then our program is essentially funded by tuition dollars and student fees, and so a lot of that funding comes from fees that are on the students as part of their tuition that comes directly to our program, because the college, as the funding comes in, it gives that funding where it feels the need is the most. And so the only guaranteed funding that we can say, I know this is coming to my program, is through student fees. Otherwise, it's sort of in the hands of the administration and how they choose to allocate those funds. We have a foundation, and we do have, years ago, we had a student who unfortunately passed away, and his family felt so strongly about how we shaped his life and his final years that they provided a donation. And we do have a scholarship foundation set up with that, because we do have a foundation that manages money if things like that come in and occur.
Jennifer, I'd just like to maybe clarify too, what really keeps us operating is not just the tuition dollars. So it's not a simple matter of more students equals more money, that kind of thing. The money that keeps us operating is trickling down from the state and is up to the college to decide where to allocate that. And I feel like maybe there were a couple questions here earlier, Christy and Matt and Mark. I really appreciate those questions. And like Jennifer said, we're at capacity. We can't really add any more classes or students in those classes, sections, or courses at this point. And so that's our biggest constraint, is that lack of faculty in order to expand, if that is the question on the table. However, like Matt said, I appreciate that. How do you connect the pipeline? And I think that first, maybe not first step, but we would be interested, and our administration has expressed interest in performing that needs analysis to ascertain areas that we could grow and that might serve that employment sector within forestry.
Yeah, and to follow up on that, we'll have the data for you relatively soon. That's one of the things that the council is going to be embarking on here regionally. Is the Council of Western State Foresters is to have a fresh assessment for need. But I just want to also put some interesting things in the discussion here about just some funny little nexuses that are coming into place. You know, one is Colorado's burgeoning relationship with the nation of Finland, right? So like we had the Finnish ambassador come through, and so there's a fun little one of their biggest exports is Ponzi equipment and Ponzi machines, and so I got to engage with one of the national sales reps for Ponzi, and mentioned that we had one of the few training equipment for specifically for Ponzi equipment, and then Colorado also happens to be sort of a primary demonstration location beyond what's going on in the Pacific Northwest, where Ponzi is well established. But some of the work that we've done on Monarch Pass and Colorado Springs Utilities and other places. So there's also some interesting nexus, just because of happenstance. I think that it kind of hits a lot of different bells. But I want you guys to know that this is something that is not new to me as well. That I worked as a ranger out in North Carolina, and the majority of our foresters on the district at one point were Haywood Community College graduates, and Haywood is one of the oldest programs in the country for 2-year forestry degree certificates and degrees in the country. And so I have a long history. It's just I'm so excited that you brought this conversation, Mark, to the group, because I think it hits so many little bells that are going to make us. They're going to help, I think, move this conversation forward rapidly about how we can grow. So there is a question: are you turning away students with your capacity? Is that something we could early on claim that the demand is not being met? Because that's an interesting question.
And that is a tough question to answer with the structure of our ability to see and minutely our wait lists and such. What we can say is our classes are full and our students can't get in. And so what we have had to make exceptions to add students, overload our classes so students can graduate. And every year I have students say, I couldn't get into this, I couldn't get into that, what can I take instead? And we have to sit down and do a very sort of strategic plan in order to get them to graduate. How many can't get in because classes are full? I don't have any way of telling that. All I know is that our classes fill sometimes within the first week or two. Registration is open, and that's unusual for this college to have that occur.
I think those indicators, Mark, are certainly things that we should start thinking about, because this has been sort of on the back burner, but I'm so glad it's come forward. And the whole reason I brought the whole Finnish connection is because the Ponzi folks have invested in education and invested in programming to generate people that can operate their equipment, obviously to incentivize use of their equipment in places where it makes sense. But when we start to blossom this conversation, there's going to be a lot of, I think, interesting points that we might be able to hit with just public-private partnerships and obviously state investment and other places. So it's exciting. But sorry, go ahead, Mark.
Yeah, a couple of the things. I'm not only interested in, I like to put my agenda out in front for everybody to see. I have no hidden agendas. One of my other ones is to not only grow this program and increase the number of graduates, but I want to increase the opportunity to improve their curriculum and improve their program. We need to grow quality and quantity. We can't sacrifice quality just to get the quantity. And I think there's a big opportunity there. And oftentimes this kind of work takes a lot of fairly technical stuff. So I think we need to look at that. And this is kind of a silly little saying that I have, but we're looking for good graduates and good products. So we want to get ours before the greedy people do. We want to grow this program and get the people that we need. So it's a funny little saying, but it's true. Our work and our effort here is we want to be leaders. We want to be the best. We want to grow the best programs and the best graduates, and we can grow that right here at home. And then we have first choice to get our work done.
Great. Jennifer, you had a question.
Yes, I want to be mindful of your time, but I just wanted to make 2 more comments. And Matthew, you mentioned the if we're full. My biggest fear, honestly, with opening this program for high school students at Poudre School District is we're going to get them all excited and we're not going to be able to take them. And that has almost made me say, I don't know if we should do this yet, because I do have that fear. And then the second piece, this conversation is so exciting to me, because one of the things Heather and I are always looking for is how can we best meet the needs of industry? How can we get our students connected? How can we get them employed? How can we say, yes, you come here and we can get you a job? Like, hey, I mean, Hayward's phenomenal. And we actually just graduated one of their students that had to finish up here. And so finding out from all of you, what are those needs? Is it just expanding our program? Is it, as Mark said, do we need to get students that can climb trees, that are more adept at what skills? And so to me, this is very invigorating, and I'll wrap it there because I'm looking at your time and know that you have more items on your agenda, and just say thank you very, very much for getting this rolling.
Yeah. So yeah, I think this has been a great conversation. I really appreciate Jennifer and Heather being here today, and I'm certainly excited that we were able to get this on the in our agenda and have this discussion before our Forest Health Council meeting as a whole. And I'm sure there'll be some people that might have some follow-up questions. So I think your emails are in. Maybe you could put them in putting them in the chat for people that have further questions if you are open to that. And we may be having future conversations, I feel. So this is great. So let's move on with our agenda because I want to honor everyone's time. And actually, I'm actually in a county commissioner retreat at the same time as this. So I'm going to jump back onto the other Zoom. And so because we're actually having wildfire matters conversations. So we need to make sure I'm in that. So anyway, so again, thank you to all the presenters. What a just exciting and great conversations. And I think we've had a few good meetings here. We've had a lot of great topics, and I feel like we've been pretty productive. So that was one of my questions is we have our Forest Health Council next week, and then we're supposed to have a meeting after that the next week because we're doing every other Friday. Do we want to continue that? Because I feel like we're on a roll. Is everyone still open to that, even if we don't make quorum? So we're continuing to have these conversations and recording them so people can catch up. So do we want to keep this cadence up, or do we need to have some Fridays off?
I'm good.
Great. Okay. So that's one. Let's take that off. And thank you, Jennifer and Heather, again. And then the next, just to honor our time, is the next. So I kind of jumped around there. The discussion of our presentation, which we really can't vote on, but as a chair, I was thinking that maybe I can do a report out. Maybe that's how I can structure it since we can't vote on what we want to present. Does that sound like that's a fair thing to say? Angela, will I be asked to present out of what we've been talking about, or how does that look?
I would personally love you to. And I'm wondering if it's easy enough for you to go back through the notes, and Courtney and I can help you with this too. We could basically pull out each of the topics that the group has discussed just so you have a bit of a laundry list. And then you could present that at the meeting next Wednesday. And I think along with that, we are going to have a discussion with some decisions about how we approach Wildfire Matters Review Committee. And Carolyn, feel free to jump in here. I'll just present the schedule. So I believe this just came out yesterday, which is why we're sort of waiting, and it'll now inform, I think, how this group operates moving forward. So they have a fairly brief schedule in the sense that 4 meetings scheduled out over the rest of the summer, with the first 2 meetings already happening in July. And just with my preliminary conversations with Alice, our ledge liaison, our ledge director, we think that this council will probably need to or expect to make a presentation to the Wildfire Matters Review Committee in that July 27th meeting, because it'll be the August 15th meeting where they start discussing bill concepts and then vote on them in the September 28th meeting. So that's only a month away, or a little less than a month away. And I might even suggest that this group, we have some substantive conversations with the whole council next Wednesday about priorities, but then this group may actually need to start meeting weekly to potentially, put together a presentation or put together sort of the top recommendations from the council. So I just wanted to throw that out, see how the members here today are feeling about that, and we'll obviously have to discuss next week.
Okay, great. I appreciate that heads up. And is there remote opportunities to participate in those meetings, or does the council have to be in Denver at the old Supreme Court and State Library?
There should be. And Carolyn, if you know differently, historically there have been remote testimony opportunities.
Yeah, I
Great.
checked with the staffers, and that's available this time.
Great. Well, that's good to hear because after driving around to Denver, to Estes Park, back down to Loveland, back down to Denver yesterday, I'm welcoming any opportunities to participate remotely. Well, anyway, so if everyone's good with me kind of doing the laundry list of what we've talked about, and then I will kind of emphasize our discussion today with Front Range, that was one really important conversation we had. Is any objections or any other suggestions that anyone else has? It sounds like we really can't vote on it, but I just want to make sure there's any other points or concepts or topics you want me to kind of emphasize. But I think this one today was a really important one to have. So with that, if you do have any, I want to honor our time because we're kind of over today. And I know I threw that other presenter in, but I just thought it was kind of an interesting another ideas kind of there. So so any comments about presenting that laundry list and then emphasizing the Front Range discussion today? Does that sound, I mean, we can't vote, but it kind of can I ask for a thumbs up? Is that okay?
I appreciate it very much. I can say that, can I?
Sure.
In general, I'm very supportive.
Yeah, I think the approach that you're talking about makes complete sense given where we are.
Great. Well, with that, I think I'll work with Angela and Courtney on that list because that's just on Tuesday, correct, or Wednesday. And hopefully you guys, my staff, because we're right in the middle of hiring a county manager, they popped in a 20-minute abatement hearing in the middle of the Forest Health Council. So I will have, hopefully I can look at the agenda. So I'm gonna have to pop out to be in a hearing, and then I'll pop back in for 20 minutes. Literally they're 20 minutes, hopefully. And I'll have Lori Hodges from Emergency Management or one of her staff kind of be my proxy as I pop out, just so she's there, so she can help me keep on track. So hopefully I don't have to present at that time. So fingers crossed. But it's later in our schedule. So I'm hoping that's I don't know what I haven't
with the time for that here. Just shoot me an email with the time for that hearing, and then I can make schedule.
let me look at it right now. Yeah, I put it on the calendar and I don't know why staff stuck in. I think it is from 11:30 to 11:50 in the morning.
Great, thanks.
We're popping them in trying to plug them in all over our schedule because our one of our commissioners is going to be gone for a month in July, and so we're trying to get some of these things done while we're all together. So, which means super packed schedules. So I apologize, but I just wanted to kind of give it up. Hopefully, I just know that timing wise, it's going to be the 20 minutes. But with that, I'll just let you all get back to your busy days, and I wish you all a really wonderful holiday weekend. And thanks for all your work. And Mr. Morgan, thanks again for bringing those Front Range in that presentation.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. Appreciate it. I have a long history with these people, and they've been first class all the way.
Well, it's super exciting, and certainly I think I've been really energized at seeing that we have a lot of potential opportunities going forward, and to do some great work and to address the needs that we have here. So, and like you said, Matt, just this a lot of this funding coming down, and we gotta. I think Colorado's going to be leading the way. I think we're moving towards getting prepared for that. So I'm really excited. So thank you all for your time, and we'll see you next week. So enjoy your weekend. Be safe.
Well, thanks all for the weekend.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Meeting's adjourned.
Put that thing down.